Are the Atlanta Falcons' first forays into free agency fulfilling, or are they foraging for a fat fish that's going to make them friskier on the football field?
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Now, if you do not know me, I am your very humble host, Aaron Freeman. AKA Mr. Drew, AKA Sirius Black, AKA Mr. AKA, and I've been covering the Atlanta Falcons for a very long time, formerly at falcfans.com, RIP. Still going strong on this illustrious podcast, and I thank each and every one of you that goes strong with me as everydayers. That means you make this podcast your first listen each and every day. And all you got to do to become an everydayer is subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. So today, of course, I am joined by Jarvis Davis of Locked On Sports Atlanta, and we're going to be talking all about this first wave of free agency, which is not technically finished at this point as we're sitting here talking, but maybe it's finished for the Atlanta Falcons. We'll talk about that and talk about if there's, a big move on the horizon. The Falcons, have they been as aggressive in free agency as we would like? All of that is in store for you on today's episode. But Jarvis, how are you feeling after, the first few days? We had the legal tampering period. We have the official start of free agency. How are you feeling about the Falcons' moves so far?
I think they've been doing a good job of shopping in the right aisles they need to be shopping in. I'm not going to say it because I know how you feel about my analysis. I don't want to bring it to Locked On Falcons, but I do think it applies when it comes to where the Falcons are financially. And they have to make sound financial decisions when it comes to the guys that they're going to bring in. The guys that they feel like can add to their roster, the guys that they know that they can add to their roster and give you something, be of value to them. And I think the signing of Mike Hughes makes a lot of sense. The signing of Leonard Floyd makes a lot of sense. And I think that, when you bring those guys in, Cardale Hodge coming back, he understands what his role is and what he brought to the table, making a Pro Bowl last year. So obviously bringing a guy back like that back into the fold at a decent number makes all the sense in the world. So for me, I guess if I can use a term or a few words to kind of put this first wave of free agency in perspective for the Falcons is, hey, makes sense. Makes all the sense in the world. So I think where they are right now is in an interesting spot because I said they feel like they can still make some cap space type moves, but I'm interested to see if Terry does that. And I know we're going to talk about the big move down a little bit later on, but it does kind of intrigue me to see, okay, what else does he have up his sleeve?
Yeah, I think we went into this offseason expecting the Falcons to kind of revamp their defense. They've added 3 players on the defensive side of the ball, and linebacker Divine Diablo, Leonard Floyd, Mike Ford. They brought back Mike Hughes, brought back Taquan Graham. Obviously, they've lost a couple of players, Grady Jarrett on that side of the ball, Eddie Goldman, Richie Grant so far. Do you feel like they're on the track that they need to be defensively to elevate this defense? Do you feel like today, if they had to line up and play ball, this would be a better defense than what it was a year ago? Or, is it the notion of, well, they don't have to line up and play ball right now, and so there's another 6 months of time where they will continue to make moves on defense? What are your thoughts on this defense so far?
I definitely think it's the latter. There's some more moves. There are more moves to be made. And when you think about the signing of Divine Diablo, that is a guy that that's going to be out on the field for you, right? Because Got Caden Ellison. That's pretty much it, in my humble opinion. They're guys that I'm expecting to get something from them, some production, and be able to contribute to this defense being better than it was last year. I don't know what I'm gonna get from Troy Anderson. Nate Lamon seems like he's gone and not coming back. So, and JD Bertrand, I don't know. Is he a special teams guy? That what it seems like to me, for at least for now. There was some things that I liked when he got into the game last year, but I'm not counting on him to be a starting productive linebacker for this team. So I feel getting guys in here that are productive, and getting a guy like Leonard Floyd in, not to be the guy, but be a guy that can help get to the quarterback and get them in that mid-range tier. That's all I'm looking for. I'm not trying to say, oh, he's going to be a top 10. I don't need no top 10 defense. I need for you guys to be right there in the middle. If you can be right there in the middle as far as putting pressure on the quarterback, putting them on the ground, I feel like this team can be what they envisioned it to be when they brought a guy like Michael Penix in, when they drafted a guy like Kyle Pitts, when they drafted a guy like Drake London, when they drafted a guy like Bijan Robinson. When you put all those assets into that top 10 range in the first round, y'all offense better be scoring 30 damn points a game, period. So, yeah, in order for them to kind of get into that realm of being where they envision this team to be, I feel like they got to continue to make moves, and I feel like they're gonna have to make it happen.
Yeah. So we'll see if they continue to make it happen, and we'll talk about a potential big splash. I've seen a lot of speculation that even though the Falcons have made some moves, they haven't made that sort of needle moving move, and that leads to a lot of speculation. A big needle moving move is coming down the pike, which could include trading for a big time edge rusher. Last time we talked, Jarvis, that was percolating out there in the world for the Cincinnati Bengals and Trey Hendrickson, and we'll break that down as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is going to give you every chance to get in on the action like never before. Because right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's going to cut down those nets. And I'll be honest with you guys, when it comes to the NCAA tournaments, when it comes to filling out my bracket, I tend to be a lot more hit and miss. But with FanDuel, the beauty is you don't have to worry about your bracket being busted, right? When that Final Four pick gets bounced in the second round, right? You don't have to throw the whole bracket away, because with FanDuel, because there's games every day, there's opportunities every day for you to win money. And even better, when you win, you get paid instantly. So you don't have to wait around to the end and hope that your bracket doesn't eventually get busted and you lose by 1 point or whatever in your pool. So make sure, if you want to get in on this opportunity, visit FanDuel.com and don't miss your chance at $200 in bonus bets and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Well, Jarvis, as you mentioned, Leonard Floyd certainly does help this pass rush, giving you a competent edge rusher that has been very productive these last 5 years. As we discussed on Locked On Sports Atlanta today, the big question is, can you trust Leonard Floyd to be as productive as he has been the last couple of years, as right now the go-to guy in this Falcons pass rush, alongside Arnold Ebiketie and still Caden Ellis? You lose Grady, Jarrett, and whatnot. What's the situation with David Onyemata? So right now, I think most of us would agree that this Falcons pass rush is not fully formed. We'll see what they add in the draft, but I certainly think a lot of people have been expecting, and I've seen this since Monday when the legal tampering period started, where the Falcons weren't necessarily being as aggressive as I think a lot of us wanted to see them be, to address some of these holes on the defensive side of the ball. And, that led to a lot of speculation that, the reason why the Falcons aren't being aggressive is they're trying to work out a potential trade for Trey Hendrickson, the Cincinnati Bengals pass rusher. There's been recent reports that the Bengals asking price is a little higher than what people think is appropriate, where, first round pick is what they're seeking. And, there were reports last week about, DK Metcalf the Seahawks winning a first-round pick for him, and then ultimately settling for a second-round pick when they ultimately traded him to the Pittsburgh Steelers this past week. What are your thoughts on the situation with Trey Hendrickson? What are your thoughts on the Bengals asking price, and do you feel like the Falcons' relatively quiet start to free agency means that a big splash like a Trey Hendrickson trade is more likely to happen than not?
First of all, I think the Cincinnati Bengals asking for a first-round pick for a guy that team is more than likely going to have to pay at least 28, 29, 30 plus $30 million annually. No, they are doing some good drugs up there in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I used to live in Cincinnati, and I know the drugs are available. Not saying that I've tried them, but I know they're available up there. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I'll tell you about the Cincinnati stories later because I'm trying to keep us on time today. But when you think about their mindset towards this, right? If I'm Terry Fontenot, I am trying to stall out as much as I possibly can, as close to the draft as I can possibly get. Because here's the thing. If I'm going to trade a second round pick, which is a fair asking price, I feel, for a guy like Trey Hendrickson, right? I feel like that might be a draft night type of deal because I want to see what I can get as far as being able to move back, so I can get another mid-round pick. So if I can get a third, and I'll be okay giving away that second round, like, all right, as much as I would love to pick at 46, but I'll bring in Trey and we'll be good. That's a lot of value for as far as that pick goes, but you can't be in a situation where you trade a second round pick now, right? And you don't know whether or not what's going to be available, who's going to be looking for who's going to be available when you picking, and a team is going to be willing to jump up for them. And you talking about having a 1/4? You pick in the first round, and then you don't pick again to the fourth round, and then after that you don't get picked into late, seventh round. That's not feasible in this type of draft, being that there are a lot of edge rushers available that I feel that can give you some production in that first year. You can't afford to do that because you hear what I said? Like, as much as I would love Trey Hendrickson, I was like, man, I want to get a young guy in here too. So let's load up, man. Like, you got Leonard Floyd, you get Trey Hendrickson in here, and you do it on draft night. You get another guy in the first round too. Because guess what? He can learn from that man. He can learn from Leonard Floyd. And you're talking about just having a wave of guys that you can throw down there in the 3-point stance on third down. Man, let's go. Those type of things I don't worry about. So I feel ideally the Falcons make this trade closer to the draft where it makes sense, or even on draft night, which makes a lot more sense to me. Because, like I said, you want to be in a space where, yeah, I want to be able to get my guy in that first round, but I also want to be able to get some return potentially by trading down as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think when it comes to Trey Hendrickson, there's really no rush. I think if you're the Bengals to come off your price at this point in time, right? Because basically, if you're going to trade Trey Hendrickson, as you said, like, basically at some point between now and the draft is when that needs to happen. You got 6 weeks. So, like, they can sit here and focus all their attention on, trying to lock up T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and whatnot, and then eventually circle back to, okay, now that we got that issue solved, now, okay, let's have a quote-unquote serious conversation about trading Trey Hendrickson, and they'll probably come down on their price at that point in time. And so I agree with you with the Falcons, where when you look at this strategy of, this hypothetical situation where the Falcons do trade for Trey Hendrickson and he's their Batman, and then Leonard Floyd becomes the Robin that he has been throughout his career. But, betting on 2 30-plus-year-old edge rushers is probably not the right way for the Falcons to go. So I think you're right, where, like, you want to be in a position, if you're the Falcons, to draft an edge rusher early in the draft. And so that probably means, because of course we know that they're 100% taking a pass rusher in the first round of the
That's
draft.
why I said the way I did. I said it with conviction.
Yes.
When they draft in the first round, you know what I'm saying? Like when they draft and they trade their second round pick, that means they would have doubled up on the edge rushers in the first and second round. What? Imagine that.
Imagine. But
man.
You don't have to imagine. You just got to wait because it's definitely going to happen. So, saying that, all that, but if as you mentioned, if the Falcons pull that off, they're not going to have another pick until the fourth round. And so I think when we talk about the potential of the Falcons trading Trey Hendrickson, this team is not a Trey Hendrickson away. They still have some other areas on the defensive side of the ball that they need to address. They have some depth issues. Talking about the offensive line, we've been talking about that for a while since the Senior Bowl, and prior to all of this, like we were sort of sitting here at the fourth round pick and hey, this is perfect time to take a developmental sort of project offensive lineman that you could groom into the future. And so it's one of those things where it's like if the Falcons are looking to make a move for Trey Hendrickson, I feel like there's a lot more pieces that have to fall into place between now and then, whether that's plugging some of these other holes in free agency, or as you said, Jarvis, when we get to draft night, knowing what the board is going to look like, can you move back and still get that edge rusher that, again, 100% that they are definitely going to take? There's no way that the Falcons are going to zig when we expect them to zag this year, which they have done for like 19 in the last 20 drafts. But like that streak ends. It's definitely going to happen this year. So I feel like the Trey Hendrickson, basically all that to say is I think it's certainly possible that the Falcons are maybe looking or are going to continue to monitor the Trey Hendrickson situation as it goes on. But I do feel like they can't pull that trade off really and feel comfortable until they address some of these other areas on the roster. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely, man, because here's the thing. When you're talking about the whole offensive line piece, development piece, I've said it before we even got this deep into free agency, essentially right after the Senior Bowl. Like they need to get a tackle that a young guy who they feel like has potential and could use a year of development. I said that would be amazing. And I will continue to say that if they are somehow able to get a guy like Trey Hendrickson, like you mentioned, draft a guy in the first round. Okay, now here's what we're about to do. We're about to go look at a guy like Jarrett Wilson. If you can get a center, what? Oh my gosh, man. You can get a center, come in here, compete with Ryan Newsel, whatever. If he on a 1 year, $3.5 million deal, whatever his contract will be, that's the type of competition that you wanna have in this summer, because I'm not interested in giving guys positions. I just don't. I mean, the only position you do that for is quarterback. In my humble opinion. Or if you bring Myles Garrett in, hey, he ain't compete with nobody. That's LeBron. He's LeBron of the NFL in my humble opinion. So I feel like if you are in a position to get a guy like Hendrickson, make sure you think about that center spot or that offensive tackle spot in the fourth round. If you don't get any more picks by trading down, you got to think about it. It has to cross your mind, because Caleb McGarry is coming up. You just extended Jake, so you're going to know he's going to be around. He's been a solid guy, but you still have to prepare for a worst-case scenario, because he's not at his peak right now, but he's solid enough so you can keep him around for a couple of years. So I feel like getting that developmental tackle, young, promising guy, not no depth guy, a guy that you could say, hey, man, this guy can start for us at some point in the near future. So I think the center in that OT spot will do them some good, taking a look at in that mid-round range if they're able to sew up a guy like Hendrickson.
Yeah. So we'll see what's what on that sort of move. But I do want to talk a little bit with you, Jarvis, about the departure of Grady Jarrett. And now that we spent many weeks speculating about it, and it did happen. And now that we're a couple of days removed from that, let's reflect a little bit more on that, and we'll do that as we wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. So in the NFL world, the salary cap is a lie. But if only you can manipulate money like you were the New Orleans Saints in the real world, because in the real world, you probably check your checking account and your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Right? Between dining out and online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track of your finances. And that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you can stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money by using the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com, and you'll get 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. So, Jarvis, we sit here a couple of days after the start of the new league year, talking about the Falcons free agent move so far. And, we spent plenty of time over the last couple of months talking about the possibility of the Falcons moving on from Grady Jarrett. I'll say, I don't want to put you in the same bucket as me, but I sort of assumed, Grady Jarrett's coming back. It's possible he could be cut, but it's unlikely. But David Onyemata definitely is going to get cut, and sort of to see that reverse, and it's like they're going to keep David Onyemata so far. Again, maybe other things are on the horizon. And Grady Jarrett's gone is an interesting dynamic to be sitting here a couple of days later to look at and sort of being like, okay, like this is not something I had on my bingo card, but like let's see how this plays out. But now that you've had a couple of days to handle the Grady Jarrett release and seeing him go to Chicago, and as I said on Monday on the Locked On Sports Atlanta Football Party, intellectually I understood it, emotionally I wasn't ready for it. But where are you at with sort of Grady Jarrett's departure in Atlanta?
Weird, man, just weird. It seems so weird to me because I feel like Grady Jarrett, as far as me covering this team, I feel like he's the first guy that I was able to actually cover when he came in as a rookie when he was drafted, and for the entire time I covered his entire career with the Atlanta Falcons. Like that was, and I just started, and it's coming to, it's like a real realization. I was like, man, like I saw it. I remember this cat when he first came in. I was out there when he first came in, and to see him at that table doing a press conference for the Chicago Bears, man, was so weird to me. And I can tell, like I've had some interesting interaction with Grady. Well, I had one interaction with Grady where it was kind of interesting. And I understand the intensity this cat, brings to the table, whether it be on the field and off the field, right? Or in the locker room when he's answering questions, to the media, from the media. So to see him really take like a little pause before, it's almost like he wanted to say something, like cuss, and then he was like, I'm fired up. I was like, man, I feel like I don't think the Falcons gonna have Cutter's remorse. But oh my gosh, man, I would not be surprised if Grady puts on for the Chicago Bears in that first year. Because it's so weird hearing him talk about being in the building where Walter Payton played football and being a two-time Walter Payton Man of the Year award nominee and all that stuff. So it's just kind of weird, man. And I don't think it's gonna like leave until probably like training camp when Grady does his press conference and he kind of sits up there, answers the questions and talk about and answer all of the questions the right way, and you kind of expect him to be that guy for this team. And it's gonna be really weird, man. And what makes it even more weird, like you mentioned, the whole David Onyemata piece, was like, oh yeah, there's no way David Onyemata is coming back. $8 million we can save against the cap. Oh yeah, he gone. But man, they said, damn. all right, David, you can stick around, or maybe they restructure and say, hey, we're gonna take a little pay cut, sir, see what's going on. But it just makes me really understand, even though I already knew it coming in, because I've been feeling that the Falcons were gonna make this move. It just lets you know that, man, that NFL, dog, it is ruthless, dog. it is ruthless, and it will forever be ruthless. That's why I say, when these cats be up for these big money contracts and all that stuff, and people be tripping about them, holding out and not coming into camp, man, dog, do what you got to do to get your money, your guaranteed money, because all that other stuff outside of the guaranteed money is funny money, essentially. So yeah, you don't want to. Yeah. So yeah, man. But yeah, having Grady up there doing that press conference, that's what it really kind of hit me. I was like, damn, this dude is no longer an Atlanta Falcon.
Yeah, it was. I said this yesterday. It was weird that the Falcons like, oh, we can't keep Grady at $20 million, but we'll keep David Onyemata at $17 million. It's like, I don't understand how. Again, I'm not sitting here being like, hey, they got to get rid of David Onyemata. It's just it's just like
principles involved, man.
Yeah, it's just like, all right, that's how you're gonna do it. That's how you're gonna do. Oh, we'll see. Again, as you said. Maybe they restructure or something like that and lower that figure at some point. But I'm eager to see what Grady does in Chicago, because with Montez Sweat there, and they drafted Gervon Dexter and a couple of young guys, and bringing in Dayo Odeyingbo, and they're still in a prime spot to take a pass rusher with their 10th overall selection. Yep. Like I'm envisioning Grady having the role in Chicago that I was hoping that he would have in Atlanta to finish out his career, which is more of a part-time player that can just kind of go out there, play 40% of the snaps, as opposed to the 60, 70 that the Falcons have been asking him to play for the last couple of years, and just kind of do Grady Jarrett things, as a part-time player, and get the best out of whatever's left in the tank. So I'm eager to see that in Chicago. But as you mentioned, just weird seeing, Grady as a Chicago Bear, as opposed to an Atlanta Falcon. So we'll see what's what on that in the future. But yeah.
And like Chicago fans, they're gonna really like him. I feel I've seen it. I've seen some of it already.
Yeah,
they're gonna like him. The dude is intense, man, and he's a chip on the shoulder guy. Every time he's been doubted throughout his entire career, that man has far exceeded a lot of expectations. I'm not saying he's going to far exceed those expectations in Chicago, but I would not be surprised if a lot of people say, man, I didn't think he was going to be able to do that. So, and then it's the second year removed off the injury as well. So, hey, you might see a little bit more pop from Grady this year than you saw last year when he was playing with the Falcons.
Yeah. So, guys, that's going to do it for us here. We'll see what happens over the weekend. As Jarvis and I were talking about the Falcons drafting an offensive lineman in the midst of them re-signing a whole bunch of backup offensive linemen and running it back with Elijah Wilkinson and Brandon Parker and Storm Norton and Kyle Hinton. They're basically every offensive lineman that was on the team last year, minus Matt Hennessy, who's now with the 49ers, and Drew Dahlman, who's now with the Chicago Bears, is back. And so this is not the behavior of a team that's planning on drafting an offensive lineman. So all that talk of the Falcons going all defense in the draft, it seems to be setting up that way. We'll see if that proves to be true at this point in time. But yeah, man, we'll just have to sort of see on that front. But we will be back with more great content talking about the hostage situation in Flowery Branch, potentially over the weekend. If there's a big move over the weekend, of course, we'll have the opportunity to do some emergency pods. And so make sure you stay tuned here on Locked On Falcons. Continue to make us your first listen by subscribing or following for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And of course, check out the Locked On NFL Draft podcast if you want to get geared up for that upcoming NFL draft action where the Falcons go all defense and definitely take that pass rusher in round one. Of course, Locked On NFL Draft and the other shows on this illustrious network are all part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.